Good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors. What night is it tonight? It is Monday night, and it is time for Couch Conversations with the Doctors. Just as a reminder, this program is for entertainment purposes only. We are not telling you not to listen to your doctors or what they're instructing you to do. We're just an enhancement to get you to the right places where you need to be. So once again, what night is it tonight? It is Monday night. It is time for Couch Conversations with the Doctors. And we're going to also ask that you would share this program, share with your friends, share, and share again, because it is Monday night and it is time for Couch Conversations with the Doctors. We're going to go around, as we always do, and introduce our esteemed panel, starting with the man who has the best voice ever. And that's our very own Joe Harrington. Joe?
Thank you, Nikki, and thank you, Congressman, for providing this platform. My name, as Nikki said, is Joe Harrington. I retired in 2017 from the Illinois Department of Public Health, where I was the regional health officer for Cook County and administrative law judge. Worked also at the City Health Department as an assistant commissioner, worked at City Health Department 3 times, and also worked in education and mental health. So that's my background, and I'm sticking with it.
Outstanding. To the doctor that's known on these streets as Dr. 100, that's our very own Dr. Maya Green. Dr. 100?
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, community. I'm always excited to learn with and from community, excited about my colleagues, and thankful to you, Nikki, thankful to the Congressman for creating this platform. I'm excited to get started on some of the topics we have. So let's get started.
Outstanding. To my colleague who tends to leave me and have fun in the sun, and I know he is enjoying wherever he's at because it's like 21 degrees here in Chicago. That's our very own Douglas Graham. Hey, Doug.
Thank you, Nikki. And you're right. It's cold out there. It's not so cold out here. I also retired in 2019. I practiced in the western suburbs of Chicago. After I was done practicing medicine, I spent 2 years in the congressman's office and learned a lot. And now I'm more interested in public policy than patient care, and I'm trying to answer your questions as best I can.
Outstanding, and thank you so very much. So that doctor who is the physician by day and the DJ by night, that's a house DJ, that is. That's our very own Dr. Bonnie Pete Thomas. Hey, Dr. Pete.
Hey, Nikki. Just want to tell everyone, and we're excited to be here to help educate the community. Thankful for you and the congressman for creating this forum for the community. And I am excited. The Alpha is going to be celebrating our Founders Day on Wednesday, December 4th. I will be DJing at a couple of places, but I'm happy to be here on a more academic perspective.
Outstanding on the ones and the twos. That's right, on the ones and the twos. To the man who makes this possible for us each and every Monday night, to the one who teaches us that true wealth is our health, our Congressman of the Illinois 7th Congressional District, Congressman Danny K. Davis. Congressman?
I spent part of yesterday, I had a wonderful day. We started off the morning with the opening of a new social service agency in the Austin community that is focusing on HIV and AIDS. So we were able to celebrate World AIDS Day with them on yesterday. And to see a new entity or a new social service agency open its doors in a community that is greatly in need and can greatly benefit was a joy and delight. I certainly want to thank Dr. Maya for being there and being one of the recipients of an acknowledgement of her work. That is an outstanding award for the work that she does with HIV and AIDS. And so we want to thank her for that. It was noted that it's not as prevalent as it has been but it's due to the work of people who've been engaged and involved with it. The core center, of course, was there and were also cited for their outstanding work. So I want to thank all of those who've been engaged in the practice of not only providing service, but of preventing the disease from occurring.
Thank you, Congressman. Quickly, before we get into our topics, I will say a little over 1 million. We hear that the numbers are getting better. You're absolutely right. But every time we hear that same 1.2.
Well, nobody's seen but me.
Can you hear me? No.
Now we're back. You know, we still hope that those millions and billions of dollars that have gone. Matter of fact, they were exhibited. I saw so many exhibits, AI exhibitions, the radiological associations from all over the world were meeting yesterday. Well, they're meeting today, but they were down at McCormick Place at the exhibition hall. And I couldn't hardly get away from there. Things were so interesting and so exciting. And there were so many physicians there. But it's wonderful the things that are being created. They had all kind of information about artificial intelligence and how it's used and how it can be used and how it's improving and increasing and revealing information that people didn't already have. So it was just a good day. And they're still in town. So I know the Chamber of Commerce is pretty good because I understand that their convention brought more than 1 point million to Chicago, just in terms of what they were going to spend and what they were going to put into the hotels where they had to stay and the food that they had to eat. So I'm sure that the mayor of the city of Chicago is very happy, along with all of the city councilmen, because it helps to generate the money they need for their budget. But at any rate, we've had a good Thanksgiving holiday leading into Christmas. And so let's head on in that direction. Thank you all.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. All right. Thank you so much, Congressman. Before we get into our topic, I do want to say you're absolutely right. We keep hearing that those numbers are getting, quote, better and better. And then if you look, it'll say 1.2 million people. It's been fixed at about that much for the past, 5 years? And the truth is, in certain communities, because of lack of resources and so many other things, education, information is also a resource. So there are, people are disproportionately impacted, right? And then I want to know quickly, about 13% of people living with HIV who don't know their status are the ones who are spreading it. So a lot of times it's unintentional. So we always have solutions. You can screen, and then quickly I'll say for HIV to be transmitted, you need two things. Just when COVID, I said they're very important factors, what the disease is trying to do and what we do as human beings, right? And so HIV is a virus that wants to impact immune systems. And what humans can do, you need two things to transmit: a source that can transmit it and a source that can receive it. We're living in a time where we can impact both of these things. So if I'm a person living with HIV, I take my medicine every day. Guess what? I'm no longer a source that can transmit it. If I'm loving and I'm living and I'm not living with HIV, I can make myself a source that can't receive it by taking medicines called PrEP. They're oral and injectables now. They're daily and every other month medicines now for both treatment and prevention. So we're living in a time where we can impact, we can be a source that cannot receive it, and we can be a source that can't give it. No matter where you are in that equation, you can be part of the solution. So get in touch with a provider you trust, get screened, treated, or engage in prevention for HIV. Thank you for giving me that time.
Well, outstanding, and thank you for sharing. I want to say hey to Sister Bonnie, who is here with us. She says, good evening to everyone. Well, as the community knows that we hear your comments, we listen to you. And tonight, I know that there was an abundance of you who wanted to talk about sciatica, back issues, and pain. They wanted to kind of share sciatica. They wanted to talk about what is it? Where does it come from? Can you cure it? How do you get rid of it? And then there are some questions about an Achilles, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right. The Achilles tendon, and is it connected to this sciatic nerve? Is that an issue? So let's get started. Don't you all jump at this at one time. Go right ahead. Hey, Audrey J. Cox, how you doing?
So, Nikki, I'm happy to take this one on. Sciatica refers to a condition where your nerve is inflamed. And this is the major nerve that powers your leg. It starts from your back, travels across your buttock, and either goes down the middle of the leg or the side of the leg. We get sciatica because something irritates the nerve. It could be a muscle spasm that closes off a hole where a nerve root is coming out, a bone spur, or if you're unlucky, the spacers that exist between the backbones, called the discs, sometimes break, and a piece of that disc will touch the nerve. Most of the time, this condition will heal itself. There are situations where it takes more than that. The current state of recommendations are physical therapy first, and if that doesn't work, then you proceed to, more aggressive treatments or conditions, things you can do. That might include an X-ray of your back to make sure you don't have a fracture, an MRI of your back to see what's touching the nerve, some electrical tests, because sometimes you see something on an MRI, but it's really not causing the problem. So you want to make sure that what you see on the MRI is actually causing the condition. So they may pass current down the nerve in different sites of the nerve to see if what's on the X-ray is actually causing the problem. There are people who get relief by actually injecting steroids and pain medication right where the pinch is. And the beauty of that is you don't have to take oral medications for it. If you're on blood thinners or have blood pressure medication problems or ulcers, you can't take anti-inflammatory drugs if you're on blood thinners. So that's the advantage of having an injection done under X-ray. So I'm going to stop there and see what Dr. Pete and Dr. Maya would like to say.
I'll just add, Doug, that was great. And in terms of non-pharmacological treatments, you have exercises, stretching, heat or cold, and the culprit is inflammation. So you want to think to yourself, what can I do to reduce inflammation? And that's swelling, pain, the perception of, or just redness and things of that nature. Those are all the Latin signs, dolor, color, Latin signs for inflammation. So if you think about it, the hot and cold treatments, stretching, keeping that muscle or whatever that might be causing it, like the spasms that might interfere with that nerve root that Dr. Doug talked about. You want to make sure that that inflammation goes down and is maintained. You can lose weight. Obesity can be a cause. So those are the non sort of medication. I know, people used to, I'm an internist. I do like prescribing medicine, but I do also like to just give people non-pharmacological treatments as well.
Well, let me tell you from personal experience. I woke up one morning in 1979 and attempted to get up and fell out of the bed. Wow. And I couldn't move. I was fortunate to have a wife who had a job and worked, and I could reach her because I called her at her school and say, Vera, I can't move. I can't get up. So she came, got me, took me over to Rush to the hospital. A friend of mine was the hospital administrator at the time. And he says, well, we don't have a bed right now, so, but let's have lunch. And by the time we finish lunch, I was so glad when they finally got a bed. I didn't know what to do. It was the most excruciating pain running down my leg that I had ever experienced. But I managed since 1979. I went to Canada. They had a treatment there at the time in Canada, in Toronto, called the Chimopapian treatment. I got it. It had not been approved by the Food and Drug Administration here in the United States at that time. And it has worked. I went to see my neurosurgeon this morning, and I'm going in next week and have a little injection and living with that and doing it. I've managed with it since 1979.
Mm.
And so they're still taking care of me.
I know we have other things to talk about. I think it'll work as a demonstration. So when I think about it, this will be, so your brain is basically a ball of nerves, and then down from that ball of nerves runs your nerves in something called a spinal cord. It's supposed to be covered for protection. It's covered first by a layer and then by fluid to make it very, very easy and cushioned on it. So it's not bearing it. Like when you just lay in water, you can float because the pressure isn't there versus laying on ground. So it's covered in fluid, then covered in nerve, then covered in nerve, and then the rest of the stuff. Then you have your bone, and you even have like almost a gate over it. You got your little bones, right? And then you have your muscles, things like that. And so different things, as they say, can cause it, right? What if these bones, which are kind of your spine, they stack? Like, look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, sometimes if this one bends that way and they kind of move, they're not stacked on top of each other, the stack kind of tilts like a Jenga game, you have your compression and it bends right there. Now you got pressure. Sometimes there's just fluid. Sometimes if I gain weight, the bottom line is this area that's supposed to be, there you go, this area that's supposed to be offering some cushion gets smaller. The bones are not aligned. You have muscle pressing against it. You get in an accident and it just does like this. Whatever the reason, the bottom line is what Mr. Harrington and Congressman Davis were telling you, excruciating pain running down the back of your, and it often feels burning because it's your nerve, right? So like they said, the solution is either fix the bone. Congressman Davis said he's getting a steroid injection. So that looks like decrease the inflammation, right? That's why you get your steroids. Like Dr. Pete said, it's inflammation. So you decrease the inflammation. You fix the bone, you cut the bone out, you take a muscle relaxant to relax the muscles that are squeezing it. The bottom line is whatever is applying pressure, take that pressure off. That's the whole bottom line, however you got to do it. And then for different bones versus muscles versus just inflammation versus infection sometimes versus, whatever it is, you address your therapy towards the problem. So, and that's why he mentioned you got to get studies to show exactly what it is. I think Dr. Graham or someone mentioned Yeah, I don't know who mentioned it. You got to get studies to see if it's the muscle, if it's the bone, if it's just inflammation, if it's, whatever it is. If the bones are disjointed, if the bone is growing something, if the bone is fractured, you got to fix whatever it is. And that's why you got to get your study so you can see what it is.
Yeah, I'll just. Oh, okay. Go ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say that I've had problems with sciatica, and I actually had surgery to have a spacer put in my back to open up the area so I would feel less pain. So there are a lot of things that can be done, and so you don't know when it's going to happen or if it's going to happen, but it could happen to anyone, even a person that's very healthy. I mean, it could be caused by a fall or slip where something changes the composition of the bones and muscles and nerves, and all of a sudden now you get pain. And I've heard it described sometimes as a pinched nerve.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something like a pinched nerve, and when the nerve gets pinched, then you're going to feel pain. And so it depends upon where that occurs as to where you'll feel the pain. And I know I've had problems before where I've had pinched nerves in the shoulder. And it's hard for me to raise my arm just because something happened, and it might have been the way I slept or something like that. I woke up one morning, I had severe pain in the arm. I went to the ER and they said, you have a pinched nerve. And over time, there was some exercise, some things, and I got better. But I think the bottom line is it's going to require a diagnosis. That means you got to see a doctor. So one, if you're having pain and you don't know what's causing the pain, you need to see a doctor. And a doctor can examine you and probably determine what the pain is, and then make some recommendations about what you need to do. But all of us should know and understand that pain is not our natural state. And so if you got pain, regardless of what caused it or where it is or what's going on, you need to talk to somebody that can help you figure out why it's there and what can be done about
it. Yeah. Joe, can you share? This is like a perfect segue. So before you had the surgery, what was your pain level like? And after your surgery, what is your pain level afterwards?
Before the surgery, I would say, and it just depended upon the day and what I was doing in my activity, but it could be as high as a 7 or an 8. After the surgery, it might have been, sometimes it was almost non-existent, sometimes it was a 2 or something. So there are things that people can do. And they can actually, if it really gets bad, I mean, they can somehow make sure that the nerve signal doesn't get down, and so you don't feel pain. But then the problem is you may need to feel pain sometimes. So something is wrong. And if they cut it off so you don't feel pain, then you may have a problem, and you may be pain free, but you might not know unless that nerve says to your brain something ain't right, and you need to talk to somebody about it. So you got to temper what you do, and one of the things that Congressman he talked about a neurologist. So I'm going to throw it back to Dr. P to talk about, because what people don't understand is these subspecialties. So what does a neurologist do?
Yeah. So the neurologist is it's a specialist that specializes in the nerves and also the brain. So people that have seizure disorder or migraine headaches or neuropathy, like inflammation of the nerves, and they have numbness and tingling in their either hands or feet. That's a neurologist. That's someone that specialized, did a internal medicine residency, and then went on to specialize in the nerves. So, and that's not to be mistaken with a neurosurgeon, which is a surgeon that has specialized in the nerves. So that's someone who specializes in like brain tumors and again, like spinal cord disorders or neuropathies like radiculopathy. So typically if you go see a primary care doctor, just as a caveat, just some insurances will not immediately approve imaging studies. It may require that even if you think for sure this person has sciatica, they might require that you have, let's say, 6 weeks or 8 weeks of physical therapy before they will approve, meaning the payment for a imaging study like an MRI. So don't be surprised at that. And that just goes back to what Joe was saying, the importance of seeing a primary care doctor early so you can get that referral, so you can go ahead and say, okay, I've done my 6 weeks of PT and I'm still having pain. Can you now approve me seeing getting the MRI? And at that time, when he also writes for the PT, he can also write for your referral to see the neurologist, which is what Joe was referring to. That's the nerve specialist that primary care doctors can refer you to.
All right. Go ahead. Go ahead,
Sorry,
Doug.
I want to answer the question about Achilles tendonitis and sciatica, because in some parts they're similar, in some parts they're different. The sciatic nerve runs all the way down the back of the leg, including the very back of the heel and up into the big toe in some cases. In other cases, it runs down the outside portion of the leg and into the fifth toe. The Achilles tendon is part of that area, but the difference between sciatica is it starts higher in the back, it goes all the way down the leg, and isn't just limited to the back of the heel. So it could be if you have Achilles tendonitis, you're walking differently or twisted something that may aggravate sciatica, or if you have sciatica, that may affect your gait and may give you tendonitis, but they're two separate conditions and they need to be addressed differently. They're two different sources.
Outstanding. Well, Deborah from Coleman's Barbecue is here, and she says, good evening to everybody. Kim Alexander is here, and she says, good evening. Kim also says, thank you, Nikki and Congressman Davis, for empowering me with the information to make informed choices. Nikki knows about my daughter's recent health emergency. I appreciate the support and guidance. Connie Taylor says, good evening to everyone. She also says, Kim also says, amen to Joe. So, Joe, you must have struck a chord in Kim that she had to tell you, amen. And Melinda Maxwell is here, and she says, hello to everyone just as well. We have an anonymous question that says, I have prostate cancer, and I am taking radiation treatments. I am wondering, can that cause you to have a sciatic nerve problem?
So this is a very, very tough situation, and that's something you should speak to your radiation therapist about. I don't think that the radiation therapy itself is in the area where the nerves would be affected. And my concern for you that there's some other structural cause of your pain. And your radiation therapist is in a great position to begin that evaluation.
Yeah, having gone through treatment for prostate cancer earlier this year, radiation, one of the things that radiation does, and my colleagues can confirm this, it could cause the bones to become weak. I'm now taking calcium to make sure that I don't have some problems. So, radiation works, but there could be some side effects from the radiation. So if you're currently getting if you're currently undergoing treatment for prostate cancer, you really need to talk to your urologist or your radiation oncologist, so they can talk to you about the things you need to be wary of as you go through treatment. Right now, I won't say I'm cured, but the doctors will understand this. That my most recent PSA, that's a prostate-specific antigen, it's a test to determine a level of this antigen, the PSA, prostate-specific antigen. Anything less than 4 is considered good. As long as you're less than 4, you're within the normal range. My last PSA was 0.08, which means it's less than 1. And less than 1 means they can't find it. So the treatments do work, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some things that will happen relative to treatment that your radiation oncologist, your urologist, and most importantly, your primary care physician that can help you with. And the best person probably is your primary care physician, because when you're through with them, and hopefully you will be at some point, your primary care physician will still be your primary care physician.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Well, Dr. Lolita Travis is here, and she says, good evening to all. Nellie Purnell King is here, and she says, good evening to everyone. And Sister Bonnie says, sciatica is no joke. All right, Sister Bonnie, I hear you. Well, we have another question that says, can diabetes irritate, cause, or exacerbate sciatica?
Yes. Okay. No, Dr. Pete, go ahead. I'm sorry. All right. Diabetes. Diabetes is the inability of the body to regulate sugars. Sugar is sticky no matter where it is. Sugar is sticky in gum. Sugar is sticky on the sidewalk. It's sticky when you have syrup on the table. Sweet things are sticky. Okay. In the body, sugar attaches itself through the body stickiness to different things. Your nerves are one of them. You know, that's why a lot of times people living with diabetes have eye issues related to the nerves. They have numbness and tingling related to the nerves, things like that, right? But dysfunction of the nerves, like the eye, and numbness and tingling of the nerves, just like the fingers and toes, are clear symptoms. Now, if sugar is sticking and causing numbness and tingling in the fingers and toes, right? Those are the same nerves that run in different, they end and they have different touch points in different places, but they're running down the back. And then sometimes there is confusion and things like that because of the amount of glucose and other things in the brain. So yes, diabetes absolutely impacts your blood cells, your muscles, your organs, your nerves. The answer is yes.
All right, for the yes, go ahead, Dr. Peach. You had something to say?
No, I think Dr. Maya hit it right on the head. You know, diabetes is a systemic disorder, and it causes all sorts of problems, and particularly uncontrolled diabetes. When the A1C is above 9, it just creates a lot of problems, and neuropathy is one of those problems. I mean, sometimes people separate the neuropathy that's caused by metabolic disorders like diabetes and thyroid diseases, and a compression problem like if there's an arthritis or some sort of disc that's impinging on a nerve that's causing. But you can certainly correlate the two affecting nerves either proximally to the spinal cord or peripherally, which tends to be more of a diabetes kind of syndrome.
Yeah, I wanted to open up the door, since Maya brought up diabetes and Dr. Pete did as well. That some people look at the number of dialysis centers in the Black community and want to understand why there's so many dialysis in the Black and brown communities. Why? Because there is money to be made in dialysis. And really, the two drivers of that are uncontrolled diabetes and uncontrolled high blood pressure. Mm-hmm. That's why you see the proliferation of these centers in the Black and brown community. And really what contributes to that is foods we eat, this whole issue of overweight and obesity. So I'm not, I just think it's important to know that that's why we're seeing what we see now. It's really related to these two chronic conditions, which can be managed and reduced and possibly potentially eliminate the problems that we're seeing in terms of kidney failure moving forward, because some of the obesity levels in the country amongst certain groups are probably wouldn't be surprised because you see it every day.
Mr. Harrington, one of the things I always say is when you go into or when you see a dialysis center, take a look at who's working there, who's owning it and stuff like that, right? Take a look down the street in your neighborhood. See who owns the fast food restaurant. And also realize some of y'all get this one, oh, Pastor Science here. So here it is. Here's my position. Y'all will get it eventually. And then make that link. Make that link between who's owning the fried fish, fried chicken, and fried all this other stuff, the majority, right? And who's owning them same dialysis centers, right? I'm talking about how it's not us,
Right.
Right? It's the same reason, I'll say it, it's the same reason for those of you that like it, listen to rap music. It's the same reason DJ Khaled raps. It's all benefiting off of our community, and a lot of times illness is a new, or not new, it's a historically, implemented, but one of the ways that's often overlooked. Illness through what we eat, like Mr. Harrington said, is a way of keeping us oppressed. So people benefit off of off of providing or putting in our communities the things that make us sick, and then turn around and benefit off of the dialysis centers that make us well. It's wild out in the streets.
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing: you can grow your own food, you can own what you put in your body, and you have a choice. You don't have to do it, right? Dr. Mason and Dr. Hampton, if they were here, they give all kinds of tips on how you can monitor what you're putting in your body, so your body doesn't ever have to be in their hands.
Yeah, I just want to add something, and then I'm going to turn my mic off, and I won't say anything else until people ask me to say something else. But it just reminded me of when I worked with Dr. Mason at the health department as an assistant commissioner. And we worked with people in certain industries around hypertension. And what we did is the care van, which Blue Cross and Blue Shield had, we decided that we're going to do some community screenings. And we sent the care van out actually to do blood pressure screenings in certain locations. And when we announced the program, we announced that we were partnering with McDonald's and Burger King. And people say, well, and some of the reporters will ask the question, well, aren't they the source of the problem? And I'm saying this really for Pastor Cy Fields. He said, well, if I'm a minister and I'm looking for sinners, I'm not going to go look in the church. So you figure it out. You got to go to the place where it's causing the problem and deal with the people that are there and provide them some information, and maybe that'll help them change.
If I can lift up, and very interesting conversation, a couple of things come to mind for me. I think we have to always be vigilant in terms of being very observant, right? We need to watch and pray what's happening in our communities and who's setting up shop in our communities, because there's always a reason, right? But of course, being a pastor, I always lift up a scripture, 3 John 1 and 2. And I think it really fits what we're saying. When God said, beloved, I pray that you prosper, right? That you prosper, right? And be in good health, even as your soul prosper. And so that, I don't think enough is said about the link between low socioeconomic status and poverty, and how it's linked toward type 2 diabetes, right? And so when we talk about food deserts, food insecurity, I've seen oftentimes, I still have a high school daughter, but oftentimes, kids' breakfast seem to be the flaming hots, right? They're carrying them to school in the morning time, stuff that just clogs the arteries, right? And so, and it seems like certain behaviors, you're right, those are things we choose, but it costs a lot to be healthy, right? It costs a lot for people to purchase the good food, right, at Whole Foods and all those places, right, all the good vegetables. It costs more than the things that really make us ill and sick and obese. And so for me, those are not only choices, yes, they are, but also it's a socioeconomic thing whereby that's where we advocate for the right businesses and for fair pricing and things of that nature, so that people can make healthy choices. Many people make unhealthy choices because that's all they can afford. They can only afford it in mass amounts of foods that's processed, right? All these foods that contribute to diabetes and hypertension and obesity. And so that's where, again, we advocate for justice and things that happen in our community. So I agree, Doctor. Yeah, we need to pay attention to who's setting up shop. And yes, it's part of it also decision part two, but also if we can advocate for the, as the Bible talks about, for the least among us, right? So that we all can make good, healthy choices and minimize those things that make us sick.
Outstanding, and thank you so very much. Well, the next question that we have via inbox says, can sciatica be caused by stress?
Mm.
Well, P, Maya, oh, Doug,
See,
okay.
almost,
You're
almost,
top.
almost
You're on
that.
deck first.
And that is if you're having muscle spasms up and down your back, and those spasms are tight enough, they can cause pressure on the nerve and cause that. But it'd be my hunch that the sciatica is more likely to be the cause of the muscle spasms because your body's trying to tell it to keep that back straight. Don't let anything else put pressure on the nerve. It could be that stress will increase your sensation of sciatica. You know, if you are angry or you're upset or you're depressed, you may feel that sensation of pain more than if you are in a good mood. But structurally, sciatica is basically a structural condition, and it's really tough from emotion alone to cause a structural condition.
Okay. Dr. Pete, did you have something you wanted to say? Because you're muted, but you look like you're talking, so I don't know.
I was just going to say, I agree with Dr. Doug. I mean, to the extent that the stress can cause muscles to be less loose, more tight, and could interfere with the nerve root of the sciatic nerve, then certainly, yes, that can cause that. And again, when people are, to the pastor's point, when we're living a life of stress, not being very active, have a sedentary lifestyle, not having the luxury of going to the gym or doing Pilates or anything like that, then all of that contributes to a less physically fit condition, which can then set you up for interference in that nerve root, which is the sciatic nerve that we've been talking about tonight.
Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I want to, listening to the conversation and the direction we're going in. One of the things that I don't want, and I especially don't want to do it as a black man, is to blame the victim. I'm not saying that people are weak and people can't do the right thing. People have been put in an environment that's not conducive to their health. That's the bigger issue. If you're in you live in an area where there's not easy or ready access or affordable access to healthy food, that's because you live where you have to live based upon what your means are, based upon what you're able to do or not do. So I'm not blaming people. And what we're trying to do is let people know that there's still ways to probably overcome your your environment and have some success with your health. And so I think that's the message we want to convey. We don't want to paint you as a victim. We don't want to paint you as someone that is powerless. You have enormous power on your own, and you can make decisions. And there are people around like us that if you're struggling with some of these and you're in a condition, in a situation that doesn't permit you to overcome the barriers, we or people like us can help you figure out how to do it so you don't have to live that way anymore. Because some people just feel stuck. And I understand that. I was born on the South Side in Woodlawn, and and I won't get into a lot of it, but and I won't get into my age. But I remember, when the Blackstone Range, before the Blackstone Rangers and the Blackstone Rangers were formed, And I knew some people that both in the Blackstone Rangers, but I lived in a neighborhood that was disciples. So I so I know about that too. But I remember in the 60s, actually, this is when I was in high school, and there was a congressional investigation into the Blackstone because they got a lot of federal money. And this is before Jeff Ford went to prison. And why Jeff Ford went to prison? Because they were bringing in a lot of money and trying to clean the money up. Anyway, I was in high school watching television, listening to a congressional investigation. And Congressman Davis knows about congressional investigations better than most. And as I was listening to it, they were talking about these hearings that are going on with the Blackstone Rangers. And a congressman said something that I will never forget, and that's why it just occurred to me now. He said, well, the best I can ascertain from what I heard, the community of Woodlawn in the city of Chicago is just a cesspool of crime. I didn't know what a cesspool was. So I went to the dictionary and found a cesspool was a toilet. And he was saying that I lived in a toilet. I lived in a good community. I knew my neighbors. My neighbors were good to me. I didn't think I lived in a cesspool. So if you were challenged and you're living in a cesspool that you didn't create, there's a way out for you. Maybe Pastor Fields has something to say about that.
Oh.
Amen. Well, we have a saying in the church that God can get us from the guttermost and take us to the uttermost, right? And so, but wherever we are, I think the point is that to a certain measure, we all have. And a matter of fact, as you were talking, Dr. Harrington, I was thinking, and what came to mind is that when we find ourselves in pain or pain around us, two things to do. One is to pray and consult your physician. And I grew up in Roseland, and in the Roseland area, in which the gangs had, great control and a lot of activity. And you're right. I think that I too didn't know the era I was living in until somebody told me. you know? And once they told me, I was like, "Oh, really? Is that my neighborhood?" Right? And so part of that is what others, not only what exists within, but it's also how we feel while we're in it, right? There's an old scripture that says, "Thou will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee." And I often talk about you can have a mind of peace even when you're surrounded by a lot of problems, right? And it all depends on your perspective and your outlook and things of that nature. And your inward, a lot of things that happen around us circumstantially, we cannot control as much as we'd like, but we can always control how we respond to it inwardly. And so even when we have the pain of sciatica, right? And my mom has been through it. Matter of fact, I got a member right now is going through it, right? And they talk about how the sciatica nerve get to them. I say, well, pray and consult your physician, right? And so we can always, sometimes can't control some things that happen around us. We can always control how we respond to it. And I think if we address some of these social conditions, right, and people doing the best they can with what they got, but I also think that if we all work toward improving some of those conditions, we can improve our health. Not only would change our body, but also change the health of our mind, right? Some of this stuff is just in our minds that keeps us into behaviors that make us so unhealthy, generation after generation.
Wow. Well, Patricia says, did I hear you say a sciatic nerve can be irritated by weight gain? Congressman, where did you say you went? Because I need to go and get my sciatic nerve fixed. Patricia.
All of these institutions can take care of you.
All right. And I think one of the doctors did say that if you have some weight gain, that could irritate it. So, yeah, Patricia, I don't know. As the congressman says, all the institutions can take care of you, and maybe the doctors can tell you what you can do to maybe shed off a few of those pounds. The holidays are here, so pecan pies and caramel cakes are not good to us right now. So back up and run, back up and run. Well, You guys, your sciatic nerve issues. Oh, wait, got another. Can a chiropractor aid with sciatica?
So that's kind of an interesting question. Historically, the allopathic physicians are not really excited about chiropractic treatment. But if you've had friends or acquaintances who've seen a chiropractor with certain back conditions, they get a fair amount of relief. So I think that's really going to depend on the circumstances, what's causing it. From my perspective, a good chiropractor will not begin to do adjustments if he has concerns about what health issues are causing your sciatica. So that'd be one way that you could check, am I in the right place at the right time? The other thing is have you had an evaluation of what's causing you pain? Because if you have a big bone spur or you have a disc that's putting pressure on the nerve, that may not be the set of circumstances you want to see the chiropractor. Or if you're a person that has frail bones because of change of life, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, that may not be your first choice. So I think all those things bear discussion with both your primary care doctor and the chiropractors so that you all can make a decision what's the best course for you.
I've been to all
Outstanding.
chiropractors. I've had acupuncture. I've tried it all. Whatever works, right on.
If I can ask a question real quick, because again, actually, I got a member who's really going through sciatica nerve as she reports. Is that something that can be repaired through surgery? I know there's probably some pain medications that probably could take, but can that be repaired through surgery? Maybe you all addressed this already.
So again, that depends on what they decide when they do the imaging, usually an MRI. And then there's another test called a nerve conduction study that confirms what they see on the image is causing a problem. Back surgery has really dramatically changed in the last 40 years. And it used to be that there's these long incisions in the back to get complete exposure. Now they're doing everything with a tiny little incision and little knives and little scopes, so that people are essentially going home the day of the surgery. So the answer is, in select cases, surgery can be very, very helpful. And so rather than think of the back surgery, what we did 40 years ago, now you may go home right after surgery and not be bound up for weeks and taking pain meds. What I can say is for those people that have had that surgery, if they have pressure on the nerve from a disc and you take that pressure off with surgery, they can tell the difference right away.
Thank you.
Well, outstanding. There are a number of different things. I know there was a little summary. The congressman himself is having a different procedure. Dr. Maya talked about some medications, and so did Dr. Pete. So I didn't know if you guys want to give a quick summary real quick for those people who are here. Like Tina Hammond is here and she says hello. And Tina is actually doing her roll call to have all the people join because sciatica is such a big issue right now.
So, Nikki, when you said a roll call, you mean like an update, like a summary of what we talked about today?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I can offer some things that I remember. So sciatica, about 40%, if I remember, about 40% will be of people in the U.S. will be impacted with sciatica in their lifetime. Every year, about 10% people will have it. It's usually something compressing the nerve, however it compresses it. Something causing this on the inside to happen, right? Whether that is a bone, a muscle, a nerve, inflammation of any kind, the overall objective is to take that pressure off that nerve. And what they do to take the pressure off the nerve depends on what the problem is. That's why they keep saying imaging, imaging, imaging. People heal in different ways. So there is medicine from a physician. Chiropractors can help. Sometimes massage therapists can help. I shout out to massage therapists. I'm a massage therapist too. Which is different from, I think Dr. Graham was talking about Achilles tendonitis. While Achilles tendonitis, it means inflammation. So there it is, inflammation. inflammation of the tendon, which connects your muscle to your bone, which is different from a nerve that moves either, causes you to moves electricity and move your muscle or feel something, right? But inflammation of that in that place can cause compression in different places and contribute to sciatica. And so just like it depends on where it is and what the problem is, for Achilles tendonitis, your healthcare provider can tell you what to do to fix it after they get those studies and find out, right? Dr. Graham was also mentioning when we talk about chiropractors, that a chiropractor, depending on what it is, can help, right? Chiropractors will help with relaxing the muscle, getting you exercises to help keep the inflammation down. They can help with bone alignment, but not necessarily if there's a fracture or a pushing or herniation. If it's just stacked on each other and misaligned a little bit, they can help with some alignment. But if it's just broken, then that's a different issue. We also talked about diabetes and how diabetes can contribute. What may not be the cause of it, but the high glucose sticks to the nerve. So say I got my nerve already pinched. Say I got my nerve already pinched on something, and that's sciatica. And here it is, all this glucose sitting on it, making it sticky and dysfunctional and causing even more tingling. May not be the cause, but it can exacerbate or make it worse. And we talked about ways you can kind of think about modifying your intake to address it, and also thinking about what we can do to help our community, right? Some of us, like we can say, hey, just eat this, but what do we do to also impact the communities around us? And most importantly, we talked about the vibrant, the beautiful, the illustrious Roseland community.
Oh, okay, so that just went too far.
Nikki, you asked me to do it. Look, I'm summarizing. Okay?
The crazy part about this is Pastor Saad may have grew up in Roseland, but where does he live today? On the west side. Moving on, west side. So with that being said, Jared D. Campbell is here. He says, I'm an advocate for chiropractic therapy. I've been seeing one since September, and it has definitely helped me. Well, that is great for you. Thank you so much for sharing. Nellie Purnell King is here, and she said, what exactly is minoxidil used for? Minoxidil, what is that used for?
So it's kind of a very sophisticated aspirin. It's an anti-inflammatory that lasts longer in your system than ordinary aspirin, which lasts about 4 to 6 hours. So it's kind of like a naproxen or an ibuprofen. They all come from the same family. The problem with it is it's hard on the stomach, it's hard on the kidneys, and if you've got a bleeding problem, it can make that worse. If you're on blood thinners, it can make that worse. So it's very common to have something like that prescribed for sciatica. My concern is you can't take it for very long without running into problems. And if you're over 65, it's probably not safe for you to take because of your kidneys and your heart.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. Thank you so very much for that. Well, Karen says, she says, Congressman, I'm having the same injection that you're going to have for my sciatica. Do we know how long the steroid injection lasts?
So that's going to be individual. It's going to depend on how severe the problem is when it starts, how successful the injection is, and are there other things that may cause that particular condition to get worse. If you decide that after getting injections 2 days later, you're moving house or you're calling the groceries in and out of the car, you may irritate that nerve all over again. So that injection has to be given a time period for it to work. And we also have to be careful to avoid those things that may provoke sciatica to begin with. However, some people get long relief, 6 weeks, 3 months or longer, if a good injection at the right place and you protect the nerve by not doing those things that are going to irritate it.
Outstanding. Well, I know you guys hate to hear me say this, but it's our time. So we're going to go along around our great panel. And we're going to do our Until Next Mondays. But right before we do that, I just want to share that Nellie Purnell King says, thank you so much for that explanation. And Melinda Maxwell says, this was so informative. I've never known how serious sciatica is. Can we have a touch or a call or have some information in reference to epilepsy on our next talk? I've been dealing with it for over 20 years and I'm tired of suffering through it. So outstanding. We hear you. This is how we talked about sciatica tonight. We had a number of people who had questions about the Achilles tendon, that pain, Achilles tendonitis. Is that what it is, Doug? Is that what it's called? And also sciatica. So we made sure that we answered that call on today, and we will talk about epilepsy just as well. As always, we go around and we ask our Until Next Mondays. So Doug, we're going to start with you. What's your until next Monday?
Well, so this is a great example of how you need to be able to work with your doctor, describe what's going on, interact with them, and let them know, and doing the testing that they recommend so that you get the right treatment. The only thing I'm going to add is if you are not improving and you get worse so that your foot goes numb, the leg is weak, and no longer supports you going up and down the stairs or getting in and out of the car, that's when you got to contact your doctor right away and say, hey, this is going in the wrong direction. Let's change the pace of this. Well, most of the time it's going to get better, but you also have to be prepared that if it's going in the wrong direction, don't wait it out. Get on the phone, contact them, let them know, and see what else can be done and what other testing should be done.
Outstanding. Well, Dr. Maya, your Until Next Monday. Doug talked about working with your doctor is key. What's your key?
I'll take a nod from what other people have said, what Dr. Mason, Dr. Tony, and then Pastor Sai mentioned, and Mr. Harrington. Working in your community is also key, right? Because it's great to do it for myself, and those things help me stand out. But it's also great to stand in and stand up for community and make sure my community has the resources it needs to protect its tribe. Yeah.
Okay, so community is key. Protecting the tribe. Doug says working with your doctor is your key. Well, Joe, what's your Until Next Monday?
My Until Next Monday, and I was reflecting on this, and we're in the midst of the holiday season and actually approaching the start of a new year. I would say to everyone that's listening to this program, you were born with everything you need to be successful. Everything you need is inside of you. Make a resolution to make a change in 2025.
All right. So Joe says success is inside of you. Doug says working with your doctor is key. And Maya says community is the key just as well, protecting your tribe. Well, Pete, what you got?
So I agree with all of my colleagues. I would just like to add the factor of physical fitness. It's important to maintain or develop physical fitness as you get older. Muscle development is very important in reducing your age and reducing inflammation. And so to the extent that your body is physically fit, it helps when you take that wrong turn or you slip or you might turn a certain way. And that's all it might take to turn that disc into something that was sitting not where it's supposed to be, but now it's pinching on that nerve. So you really do want to focus on being physically fit. And it doesn't mean necessarily you having a gym membership, but certainly that helps, because when you can build community, it helps to keep you accountable. When you develop a group of friend group that can help motivate you, and hey, I see you tomorrow, girl, we're going to work on our back or our arms or whatever. So I think to the extent that you can build and develop muscle and stay physically fit, particularly the core, you're working on your core, which is like your waistline, your thighs, your hamstrings. Working on that is very important. And then also reducing stress. Stress is a huge issue in our community. We're so used to living with it that it's just, and the reason why I say stress is because stress causes your stress hormones to be elevated, like cortisol, like norepinephrine and epinephrine, and then those stress hormones causes inflammation to happen. So inflammation is the key. Keep your inflammation low.
All right. So if Jasmine was here, she would say mindfulness.
Yes.
Mindfulness, yes. So Dr. Pete said physical fitness, reducing inflammation, and reducing that stress is the key. Joe says success is inside you. Maya talked about protecting that tribe and your community. Doug said working with your doctor is key. Well, Pastor Fields, what you got?
Yeah, actually, I got a couple of things. I want to piggyback off
Oh,
Dr. Doug.
okay.
My gear on should be encouragement for everybody. My gear, Chicago Bears. Dr. Doug said when you see it's going wrong, change directions. That's what the Bears did. So when we see ourselves, our health is not where it ought to be. We got to change directions, make some new decisions, go on some new paths. So my gear represents going in some new directions concerning our health. But we talk about sciatica nerve, and let me just help everybody real quick. That's a nerve in the body, but there's this whole proverbial saying, these people or this situation get on my last nerve. So the nerve, that last nerve that might not be called sciatica, I just want to lift up Colossians 3 and 12. You want to help that last nerve, put on, the Bible says, put on compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. That'll help you deal with that person who's sitting on your last nerve.
Oh, all right. Well, Congressman, as always, take us home.
Well, I appreciate my physician because we went back 10 years this morning. From the time I first went to him, he had just come to the institution and he showed me the good discs, the ones that weren't so good. And he said, that's the problem. I don't know what I was looking at, but I felt pretty good in terms of believing that I'd learned a little bit and that I knew what was working and what was not. And he said, if it ever slips right back where it's supposed to be, so I'm still waiting for it to get right back where it's supposed to be. Thanks for all of your information. I hope that our participants have learned something that they may not have known. And I think it might help them and might help those that they are interacting with who have this problem. So have a wonderful evening. We'll look forward to next week. See you then.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. God bless.